Sneezing powder. Once upon a time, there lived a brownie called Smarty. He kept a little shop in Hollow Town in which he sold jars of honey, fine yellow lemons, and big yellow pills that helped to cure colds. In the winter time, Smarty did a fine trade, for anyone who had a cold came to buy his honey, his juicy lemons, and his cold pills. Then they would go home, squeeze the lemons into a glass, put in hot water and sugar and a spoonful or two of Smarty's golden honey, take a cold pill, and go to bed. And lo and behold, next morning they were cured. But in the summertime, nobody seemed to have a cold at all. It was most annoying for Smarty. Instead of thinking of selling something else, such as ice creams or cool lemon drinks, Smarty still went on hoping that people would have colds and buy his cold cure. So, he wasn't quite as smart as his name, was he? He was quite smart enough to think of a naughty trick, though. If only I could make people think they had a cold, they would come and buy my honey and lemons and pills, thought Smarty. If only they would sneeze or cough just as they passed my shop, it would be so easy for me to say, "Dear me, you are getting a cold. Buy my cold cure before you are very bad." But nobody ever sneezes outside my shop. Smarty sat and thought for a bit, and then he grinned all over his sly little face. He slapped his knee in delight. He had thought of a wonderful idea. "I'll go and buy some sneezing powder from old Dame Flap," he said to himself, "and I'll put some into my pepper pot and shake it out of my bedroom window whenever anyone passes. Then they will sneeze hard and perhaps come and buy my goods." So off he went to buy the sneezing powder. He paid Dame Flap a silver coin for a boxful, and she wrapped it up for him. It was a strange powder, rather like fine green flour, and it had a strange smell. Smarty ran home with it. He emptied some into his pepper pot and slipped upstairs to his bedroom window, which was just over his shop. He leaned out in excitement. Was anybody coming? Yes, here was Old Man Shuffle. Smarty waited till he was underneath the window, and then he shook out some of the powder. It went on Old Man Shuffle's nose, and he stopped. He took out his big blue handkerchief and held it to his nose. Whoosh! He sneezed. A whoosh! Hi, Old Man Shuffle. You've got a dreadful cold, called Smarty. Come into my shop and get some honey and lemons and pills. So in shuffled the old fellow, thinking it was very lucky that he should be outside Smarty's shop just when his cold had begun. He bought a jar of honey, 2 lemons, and a box of yellow pills. Smarty grinned. He ran up to his bedroom again. "Ah! Here are Mr. Twiddle and his wife," chuckled Smarty. He shook his pepper pot over them. They stopped and fumbled for their hankies. "Achoo!" said Mr. Twiddle loudly. "Ich! Ish! Ish!" sneezed Mrs. Twiddle politely into her handkerchief. "Achoo!" went Mr. Twiddle. "Not so much noise, Twiddle," said Mrs. Twiddle. "Ish! Ish! 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 Dear me, we are beginning colds, I think. Look, let's buy some honey and lemons, and maybe we'll stop our colds from getting worse." So into Smarty's shop they went and bought what they wanted, much to Smarty's delight. As soon as they had gone, he popped upstairs again with his pepper pot full of sneezing powder. He made Twinkle the pixie sneeze and buy honey and pills. He made Mr. Metal sneeze so strongly that his hat flew onto the roof, and he had to get a ladder to fetch it. He made Dame Wink sneeze 12 times, and at the end, her bonnet was right over her nose, and she couldn't see where she was going at all. Oh, Smarty had plenty of fun that day, and he made plenty of money too. But when everyone found that they had no cold at all when they got home, and didn't need the honey and lemons, they were rather puzzled. They talked about it to one another, and they found that all of them had begun their sneezing fits outside Smarty's shop. "Very nice for Smarty," said Mr. Meadow. "Let us go along and see what we can see." So they all went back towards Smarty's shop and peeped round the corner. And they saw Smarty leaning out of his bedroom window, pepper pot in hand. "Aha!" Old Man Shuffle said angrily. "So that's his trick, is it? Come along, everybody." They all went into Smarty's shop. Smarty hurried down to serve them. Mrs. Twiddle was waiting for him. She snatched the pepper pot out of his pocket and shook it all over Smarty. "Colds are catching today," she said. "Sneeze, Smarty, sneeze. Dear, dear, you must have caught our colds." "Whoosh!" said Smarty. "Achoo! Ish, ish, ish. Achoo! Choo!" Mrs. Twiddle emptied all the sneezing powder over him. My goodness, Smarty simply could not stop sneezing. It was dreadful. "By the time you've finished, I guess you'll want to buy a pot of your own honey, a dozen lemons, and a box of pills," said Mr. Twiddle, laughing. "Goodbye, Smarty. It serves you right." They all went out, giggling and chuckling, and they could hear Smarty's sneezes all the way down the road. Poor Smarty! He sneezed all that day and all that night, and by that time his nose and throat and eyes were so sore that he had to take 2 jars of honey, 6 lemons, and 2 of his own pills to cure himself. Now he has shut up his shop and gone out selling ice creams, and a very much better idea, too, in the summer. Don't you think so? The end.